Welcome to Opinion Duel from the Purple Network. I'm here with Charles Cooke of the National Review and Zoe Carpenter of The Nation. I'm Christina Bellantoni, Editor-in-Chief of Roll Call, and today we're talking about Keystone XL. This is a pipeline that has people up in arms on all sides of the political spectrum. So, Charles Cooke, the president delayed a decision on an environmental impact analysis of what this pipeline, which would take oil from Canada basically down to Mexico, he delayed that decision.
He did.
People are calling it politics.
Well, the whole thing is politics, and I think it's become increasingly less important, actually. Keystone itself, 2-3 years ago, was probably reasonably important to people up in Canada. Now they're moving the oil anyway. They're doing it by boat, they're doing it by truck, they're doing it by river, and that's a lot more dangerous than a pipeline, but they're still getting a lot of it into the country. So in a sense, this has become a bit of a totem and a fetish for both sides. Obama delayed it. Of course, it's politics. It's Tom Steyer, again, is involved in this. The base of the Democratic Party is extremely against this. He doesn't want to annoy them before the midterms. Republicans see it as the worst thing that has ever happened because the president is sort of, it's a totem of a president who doesn't like energy. But does it actually matter that much? His own State Department says no, it's not going to have a huge impact. You know, that oil is going to be moved and transported anyway. So yeah, he delayed it. The whole thing's become political. So,
Zoe Carpenter,
Sure.
What should we expect to happen here? I mean, there's millions of dollars in political lobbying money involved, ad money. Maybe it doesn't have any impact at all?
Yeah, a couple of points. I think, first of all, the president, to say that he doesn't love energy, ignores a lot of his statements about all the above energy policy and drilling on federal lands, but that's a small aside. I think that it has become a political issue, and for the left, I think the left recognizes that in order to get momentum going on climate change for a broad array of strategies, there needs to be a campaign that's tangible and that people can really get behind. And so I think, I will acknowledge, I think some of the focus on Keystone is because there's nothing else right now that's bringing people out to the White House to lock themselves to the gate. You know, it's a way of channeling concern about climate change. I think that's true. However, Keystone itself, the pipeline, is significant and important as a project. We wouldn't see so much lobbying for Keystone from the Canadian government and from the companies who are involved if it weren't the best and most affordable way to get the tar sands oil out there. The tar sands oil is being developed slowly, but we've seen investment fall off in the tar sands region as the pipeline has continued to be delayed. We know that rail lines are at capacity now, so we can't expect that the huge volume of oil that they want to bring down via pipeline could actually just go via rail. Other pipeline routes are looking increasingly unlikely in Canada. And the State Department's report was based on a number of assumptions that may not play out. It was based on the assumption that oil prices would stay above $75 a barrel. It was based on the assumption that no one in the world would do anything about climate change, that there would be no carbon tax. So I think a number of those assumptions may not bear out, and I think that there are a number of reasons to think that this oil, which is significantly more carbon intensive, as the State Department's environmental impact statement acknowledged, will not move in the volume that Keystone would move it if the pipeline is not built.
Right. I wouldn't say it's significantly more, but it is more. You're right.
17%.
I agree with a lot of what you've just said, actually, in that it is the cheapest way to move it, and that's why they want it. It's also the safest way to move it, and that's why they want it. And they want to export more and more of their oil. So the question, given that that is true, and given that the State Department has essentially said, and yeah, you're right about assumptions, but has essentially said, well, this isn't going to cause too much of a problem. The opposition to it is actually just opposition to carbon and fossil fuels in general. And Keystone has just become a symbol of this. So yeah, the president is indulging that because, and I would differ in my characterization of him, but he's not a monster on energy. He didn't come in and do what you and Chris Hayes and The Nation would like, for example. The president recognizes that his base hates fossil fuels and wants to stop them, and he's not going to do this before an election. As I say, Keystone 2 years ago, it was much more about Keystone per se. Now it's about politics.
Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, 2 years ago, college campuses were on fire with this issue. That's how I first learned about it, when you saw people protesting the president, his administration, all of the officials that were coming to speak on campuses saying, do something about this. They're calling it dirty oil. And so that is that activist base, but it's very different from the people who are spending the money on this issue.
That's the case in any issue, right? We always see grassroots activism, once it gets big enough, translate into political action that involves large amounts of money. However, I think we can't forget that the pipeline itself does have significant impacts. We've already had at least 12 spills in the first year of the lower section of the pipeline. We've seen enormous damage from crude oil and pipelines and from tar sands oil and pipelines. We know it's more corrosive. We know it's harder to clean up. And the risks are huge. Just to say that it's safer, maybe. We don't really know. You can't control for all risks. And so I think that you're right that yes, the main point is that we have to get off fossil fuels and tar sands oil in general, not just the Keystone Pipeline, but everywhere. The Keystone Pipeline is a place to start. And if you look at what the benefits of Keystone are, 50 jobs at most 50 long-term jobs. I mean,
well,
let's build a supermarket in one neighborhood and get 50 jobs.
I think that's an incredibly low estimate. And one of the reasons you've seen
That's
unions,
the State Department's
one
estimate.
of the reasons you've seen unions get behind this is that they recognize that this is good for jobs. But whether it's direct jobs or not, as I have argued elsewhere, this is about burning carbon, and burning carbon is good for economies. And it just comes back to this question of, well, are we going to do it or not? Now, this idea of this sort of dark money that is behind this, that was hinted at, let's look at the numbers on Keystone. Right? There is a small Democratic activist base that wants this killed. And then there is the American people, the vast majority of whom want it built. Most Democrats want it built. It's not just in places like Arkansas and Louisiana where there are oil interests. Democrats across the country, between 51 and 55% on average, want this built.
And do they understand the issue? I mean, do people really know what it actually entails?
I think because they come down on the side of burning carbon.
No, I think that they come down on the side of job creation, and I think that the proponents of the pipeline have been really selling faulty numbers. They claim thousands of jobs, even though those are jobs split over 2 years. They're temporary, they're construction jobs. And yes, the construction industry has been hit very hard by the recession and by other issues in the economy, and so they are desperate for jobs, and I think we should acknowledge that. But however, if you close a couple tax loopholes that benefit oil companies, you could spend that money on water resource or water infrastructure repairs in those 5 states the pipeline would go through, and that would create 95 times as many jobs as Keystone Pipeline.
Look, I would be entirely happy to close those loopholes just as a matter of fiscal conservatism, but the reality is that Americans really care about energy and gas prices. I mean, if you look back to 2006, for example, Nancy Pelosi and Harry Reid, before the midterms, went to a gas station when gas hit $4 a barrel, and they said, this is what happens when you have an oil man in the White House. This is what happens when Dick Cheney gets near the levers of power. Now, Republicans play the same silly game, which is to pretend that presidents can set oil prices. Oh, look at what it was on the day that Obama came into office. Look at what it is now. But they do it because they're tapping into a general public concern about the price of oil, the price of heating, the price of driving their car to the mall and back. And Keystone and the increasing supply of that energy, fracking is another good example, really matters to people. They want Keystone because they want more oil coming into the country.
But it's not coming into the country. The oil market is a global market. This oil is going to refineries in the Gulf of Mexico, and it will be sold on the international market. There is no reason to think that that oil will affect gas prices. In fact, it will, if it does anything, it will make gas prices rise in the Midwest.
So
it's a commodity, whether it's sold in the United States or not. The
Exactly.
increased production lowers the price of American gas. It lowers the price of a barrel of oil. That benefits people in the United States.
But it's not the amount of oil and what would actually be the cost of production, and compared to its percentage of the whole market, wouldn't have a significant effect on gas prices.
So quick predictions. If Republicans win the Senate this fall, does the Obama administration just send this through and approve it, or what do you think?
Well, I think what will happen is that there will be a bill on his desk. It'll put him in a very difficult position, but more importantly, it will put who's ever gearing up for 2016 on the Democratic side in a difficult position, because what do? Do they take a position that's against the majority of the American people, or do they criticize a sitting president?
Prediction.
I don't have a prediction for what the administration will do, but I think that they will be in a very tight spot with the Democratic base if they reject the pipe, or if they accept the pipeline.
Well, we are going to have to leave it there for today. This was the Opinion Duel from Purple Network. I'm Christina Bellantoni, Editor-in-Chief of Roll Call. Thanks very much to Charles Cooke of the National Review and Zoe Carpenter of The Nation.